Well, hello, my friends. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets, and we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube. It's under the channel L.A. Little. You can catch me there. Subscribe, get content notifications every time content's pushed. You can watch it anywhere, any device, anytime. Make it nice and easy for you. As far as these markets, nice and easy to the upside. Another big day up. We talked about it last night, saying, hey, that these markets look like they're going to extend. Didn't know they were going to extend this much. All I can say is, the bull never dies, right? It just continues on. Look at these percentages on the way up. Of course, that's the DBA, but you had a 1.5. I don't think that's quite correct, but it was a large percentage. NDX was lagging all day. The IBB was struggling. Big caps, 300 points on the industrials, and the composite up 1% itself. So, last week couldn't do anything right. This week can't do anything wrong. How far can it go? Well, we'll look at that here in a minute. We had gold down, we had bonds down, we had the dollar down. So a complete reverse, everything else up. Oil spiked. It was up 8% at one point, ends up at 5.3 on the day on the USO. It actually closed up about 8% on the futures. I didn't look to see what it did after hours, but it was a big day up on oil. Let's look at these. Indexes and see what we got. So if we start with the S&P 500, we came down yesterday and we talked about this last night, right? We got underneath it, less volume, hammers higher. That's going to try to get follow through, and that's exactly what it got. And that follow through now, sets up the possibility going all the way back up here to test these highs again. I mean, we're not that far away. What are we at, 2052, and that high is 2067? 15 points away in this market. 15 points is nothing. That's 15 minutes anymore. So, I guess, when I look at this, are we going to follow through? I can't tell. You got volume pushing up. You have to think it can. I think the key area, one more time, I mean, intraday, the key area was right here, and he got over it. So it was the top of this big breakdown bar, and he got over it. So, maybe it comes back and it tests into this bar, and that's probably the key tomorrow. Do you get back into this bar or not? If it doesn't get back into this bar, it's going to try to get up here into the top. And you got this December 28th bar still up there. Most of the rotation has been in this zone, and when one of these sides break and you actually get extension, right, that's when it's probably going to try to take out the highs, or if it comes this way, it's going to try to take out the lows. So far, they've bought every one of these moves to the downside. Twice, they've sold them on the top side. Will the third time be the charm up here if it gets there? I honestly don't know. All I know is right now we're in a big range, an even larger range if you take the top and bottom of this. You have the potential for a breakdown that could be ugly on the bearish side if it were to break that way. But so far, it just simply hasn't done it. And so, if it doesn't do it, it doesn't do it. You just got to take what it's giving you. And right now, it's giving you a big range. That says when you get towards the bottom of the range, your risk is low to put on the longs. When you get to the top, your risk is low to put on the shorts. And I suspect when it gets up there, they'll try it again. One time, probably within the next week or two, one of these is going to break. And when it does, look out, because there's going to be a lot of stops on the other side of that trade. Looking at the NASDAQ, not as strong, but coming back up to that breakdown bar, that top, 47.42. So, this one is a nice read, because the test here will take place about the same time that the test into the top of the 28th bar takes place on the SPX. This did the same thing, tried to get down the lows, didn't quite get to them yesterday, flips around, does a hammer, gets the follow through. This one's going to try to test into this high, 47.42. if we look at the NDX. Now the NDX was weaker all day long, and that was primarily because of the biotechs. Actually, it was the biotechs, and the large cap technology wasn't moving either early on. Those finally flipped around in the day. 42.35 is the number here. You're only about 6 points away. That looks like it's almost impossible not to try and test. This has been the weakest group. And if we go inside of it, look at that biotech, you can see that volume pushing down on the biotech. Now note that as it came down, it was coming into this big volume bar, 309.94. It got to 3010, or excuse me, 310. So just misses it. Doesn't have quite the volume, but you can see again the volume pushing to the downside when it pushes. That was the big problem early. The other problem was that you couldn't get your big caps to move. The Apple finally ended up slightly on the day, 0.02%, so you can see that wasn't contributing. Microsoft has been a world of hurt since the earnings. They got a little bounce today, and actually a little bounce here ends up being almost 0.75%. And Google's the other one. Now Google's earnings weren't that great, but they were sold down quite a bit into earnings over the last 3 months. And Google is slightly up as well. So the 3 big caps, that's 30%, 30+% of the weighting in the NDX. Another third of that weighting is in those biotechs, or just about. That's almost 2/3 of the NDX. Everything else had to move pretty big to carry this thing higher, the NDX higher, and that's what happened. Taking a look at the Russell. Now the Russell, let's see what that percentage was. 1.83% was the actual number. Russell's coming up to test these highs again. It did get over it here on that little red arrow. It got over that swing point high, so it's not going to be a break of the swing point high, but it's kind of a key resistance area come tomorrow, and that will be kind of the tell of the tape there on the Russell. What was happening today? Well, you had a big push in oil. Let's go to the oil market and look at that guy. Remember we talked about a reversal on Thursday. I actually went over this last night, digressed quite a bit on it, saying that it was going to try to test into this low, this resistance zone. That low, these 2 bars, that low is 2053. It got to 2029. Look at the volume on this. When I see that kind of volume on the upside after this kind of a decline, I know you just squeezed out a bunch of shorts. You took them out, you rang them out, right? Took all their money and just threw them away. They were scammering to get out of the way. So when I see that, one of the questions to me today in the trading room was, will oil go back up there and test that? And when you get that kind of a blow off and it's short covering, you really don't have to go back up there and test that. And so I don't know that it's going to go test it tomorrow. I think it did what it wanted to do today. It blew out a bunch of folks. Now it's probably going to drift back into the support zone, and then you're going to set up the potential for an ABCD structure right to the top side. So you have this kind of a move already, pull back into here, and then an attempt to get back into this swing point low. So that's the way this thing is set up. The fact that it's finally broken a retest, regenerate bearish tells me that at least now on this time frame it's sideways, but we know that oil's definitely not sideways on the longer term time frames. It's not even close. And so from that perspective, this is just a bounce. It's gonna generate some up and down type activity, some bottoming type activity, and then that, if it does it long enough, then on the longer term time frames you might actually see a change. Oil, big spurt today, that led to a huge move in the XLE and the various energy sectors. So here's XLE. XLE was up about 2.3, almost 2.75%, going after swing point highs. If we look at some of the others like OIH, OIH gets a nice bounce, up 3.72%. XOP was up even more. The drillers and service guys up 5%. Big, nice, strong move in that services sector. And then you can take it elsewhere, like TAN. Look at the move in the solar stocks, up almost 5%. And if you go inside some of these, I was pointing out to members today, look at this one, CSIQ. This guy was up 25% today. You're talking about blowing some folks out. You know, anyone trying to short this just got blown out of the water. And that went from 43 to, what is that, 18? 1868. Lost 25 points. Pretty good haircut. He gets 25% back on a day, and all it is a bounce. That's pretty ridiculous. So, you know, that's the kind of extremism we have anymore in the oil markets, just as we have extremism politically around the world, especially in the Middle East, with the gruesome news with ISIS and the Jordanian pilot tonight. You know, extremism seems to be in vogue, and it's kind of sickening actually, but I guess it is what it is. Let's look at the dollar. Dollar got a spike down today. Volume comes out of this guy. So that's pretty interesting. I didn't know how much volume was coming out of it. This is finally going to get a retrace. You know, we've been talking about it wants to retrace for a while. It's been evident that it's been trying to. So if we look at this on a weekly, let me see, that low is 24.43. Today's Tuesday. You're doing 6 already, 12 there. Yeah, unless it settles down, it's going to have the volume. This has been a non-stop. Look at all these swing points that broke on the way up. You talk about, you know, a heavily shorted sector, in this case a currency. This thing was heavily shorted, as you can see, because it had broken all of those swing points on the way down, or excuse me, created all those swing point highs on the way down. And so now you're doing it on the way back up. You know, I think it's a little early to call this any deeper. It does look like it's going to definitely come back into this area. That low is 24.19. Let's go back to the daily. 24.19. Yeah, I could get back. I could get back quite a ways. So tomorrow will be a key test right here. You know, if this is really a reversal, you know, what you'll see is it expand on down and just blow this thing out. Now, if it's not, you know, then it's going to come back. It's going to test under this, not have any volume, and actually hold. And then you're going to get some sort of a range trade, if that's the case. So that's the one side of it. If we go to the other side, that means the euro was moving back the other way. And so if we look at the euro, 1.3%, pretty big move, going into this big bar. It doesn't have the volume. 113.37, 113.49. Closes, goes over it, back under it, closes under it. I don't think that's going to go any farther, at least not right now. It's going to come back down, do some backfilling. Let me back up, because I don't want to leave you with the thought here that oil is going to go anywhere, you know, big time, and I think I covered this, but these moves, folks, when you get these kind of presses to the downside, right, you're just pressing and pressing and pressing, right, all the way down. You know, a little sideways action here and here, press down, a little sideways action. Now you get the false break to the downside and the fast move back up. What has the fundamentals done? Have they changed? Did they change overnight? Did they change the last 3 days? Has anything fundamentally changed? No. This is purely a result of this huge, strong, steady push to the downside. A coiled spring bounces. And that's what it's doing. Doesn't change the fundamentals. You know, this thing is going to take a long time to work its way back up. Even if it gets back up here, it's going to take a very long time. And so when I go back now, and the reason I flip back over here is when I go back to the currencies, these guys have pressed lower and lower and lower for a very long time as well. Now they're getting their bounce. Does it change the fundamentals? No, it really doesn't. Can you come back up here and test this high? Sure. Right? I mean, that's doable, another 1.5%. But doesn't change the long-term picture. The long-term picture is the same. The picture is Euro still wants to go lower, and if you pull it back, you know, and look at it on other time frames, this is but a blip on the way back up. It can get up to 115 looking at that chart. Go to the monthly, it can come back up and try to test back into this low. That's up at around 119. So you can see resistance 115, you can see again 119. It can go that far and still be in a serious downtrend. So realize that, yeah, these things can breathe and they can move, but it hasn't changed their fundamentals at all. The fundamentals still the same. Let's look at the FXY. That's the other one. So this is the yen. Yen's been bouncing already. See how it's building out this base? The real question is, will it get now? This one's actually set up something it can try to do now. And now we'll see what it's going to do. You got two swing point highs here. They're correlated pretty close. You get a break over two swing point highs, you can get a decent move to the top side, right? You can get a faster move for a couple, 3 bars maybe. Pull this back, and that's the yen. It's been doing it for about 8 weeks. Pull this back, what does it look like? Doesn't look like much, does it? It's just a bounce after a compressed move to the downside, just like this was a bounce. Although this is a much better building base, right, than that one was. That was like a spike short, you know, short covering. So, yeah, it's base building. Is it going to go lower? Yeah, over time. But you just can't. I mean, you've already gone from, what is it, 96 to 80, you know, in a currency. That's a long way. You know, those fast moves, you know, they're issues, and they show up elsewhere, and it has shown up elsewhere. But, you know, it just, you don't go down forever. You don't go up forever. You have to take breaks along the way, and then the trend reasserts itself. And I suspect over time, as the year plays out, that's exactly what you're going to see take place here. Nothing's any different. And then finally, let's go to the bonds. And I'm going to these because these have been in serious uptrends. Here's the bonds coming back now. They get a press off yesterday, a bigger press today in terms of price. Volume still about the same, trying to come back into this bar, into this area. Yeah, they extended like crazy as well. Can they go higher? You know, if I pull it to a monthly, I think they actually eclipsed the high, so a retest regen off of it. 132 down to 125. Let me see at the weekly. Almost the same price points, 131 to 128, and then that spike high, which is 127. Coming back to the daily now, 127. Yeah, so that's this area in here, right? So we could actually see this trade all the way back into here before it could resume, you know, before it could trade as low as here prior to reassuming the trend on the way up. And you've got congestion here. That to me, with that bar, this looks like the place. If you're going to buy, this looks like the place to be thinking about it. Okay, having said all that, what do we got? Well, we got indexes that want to move higher. We've got the OX markets that now are supporting it. Let's take a quick look at the sectors and see what the sectors are telling us. And so if I pop into the sectors, the IBB I already showed you, so I won't go into that. But let's go into 3 or 4 of these other ones, like IYT. This one pressed down with volume yesterday, goes up today, doesn't have that much volume. That one could roll over at any point. XLB actually broke swing point highs today. That was a powerful move. That definitely is going to try to press a little bit higher tomorrow. XLE broke over swing point highs as well. Well, I take that back. This one was already broken. So it's pressing up to the next one. Has some decent volume. Yeah, this one can test the highs. It can even test up into this high. That's 82. Yeah, it can get anywhere from about 81 to 82 pretty easy. Not that much farther. So energy. So the beat up ones are the ones that are really bouncing. Another beat up one's been financials. What do? They bounce. They get over the swing point low finally. That puts this into a sideways trend on this time frame. And it's already a sideways trend on the weekly. So yes, these can bounce. Can they get back up to this high, back into this bar? Yeah, they can get back up there. It was okay volume today. It's testing this big breakdown bar. Top was 23.75. It just got over it today. So if it holds it tomorrow, then the highs it will test. If not, maybe that's it. XLI had a really nice day today. Volume-wise and price-wise, that one looks like it can go higher. XLK really didn't do much. This one is not that far off the low still, and that's the NDX components as well. That's the one that's struggling. If this market is really going to go up and break highs and so forth, you would expect this is going to go test these highs, break them, and go back to the highs. Right now, it doesn't look like it has it. Safety stocks, XLP, no volume, big bounce. XLU, no volume, not much bounce. XLV, the biotech was pulling it down all day. It eventually flips around, does a nice hammer again, lower volume. That one can go back and test the highs. And the consumer discretionary, that one actually looked pretty good today. The consumer discretionary had a nice push up. I just didn't have any volume associated with it. So when I look at all of these, the market can get a little bit more of a stretch. I suspect it's going to take a break probably tomorrow, and we do some sort of sideways action unless we get something out of left field from the Fed. The Fed guys are out there beating the path again, and so we'll see if they have anything special to say tomorrow. Tomorrow, I don't think there's much in the way of data domestically. I'd have to look, but I don't think that tomorrow was a big day on the economics. More earnings coming out of the energy sectors, and I'm quickly looking here. Yeah, there's a couple reports, PMI reports, and ISM to report tomorrow. So some more data. Data continues to, if you just look at this market, forget the technicals for a minute, look at the fundamentals. Earnings being sold for the most part. Economic data, weaker and weaker and weaker, right? I mean, if anything, it's treading water. In most cases, it's actually getting weaker. Does that sound like the kind of scenario that takes us higher? Technically, we could still break either way. Fundamentally, we're definitely getting weaker. Maybe this market knows something I don't know, and that something is that the Fed's going to not raise rates and tell us that, or the Fed's going to actually do something even more dramatic. I don't know. Or maybe Europe just is that strong. I mean, I don't have the ending volumes on this, but if you look at the DAX, it was up again today. This guy was up another 0.5%. Sold off some at the end of the day. It was up over 1% early. So, across the board, the only thing I see moving is Europe. Everything else just kind of hanging. And that's true in Asia for the most part, although they're hanging at highs. And it's true for us, range trading, big ranges. So we'll see. I'm uncommitted on either side at this point. We could go either way. And I guess one last thing I might point out before I finish here is if I had to make a bet on anything, right, I would make it outside the equities right now. I would make it on the currencies. I would make it on the oil markets. I'd make it elsewhere where we've had compressed moves and there's tradable trades, right? Maybe even the gold markets. That to me holds a little bit more promise than the equities right now, because until the equities break that range, if we go back to the range and put up S&P 500 again, until we break this range here, it's just a large set of noise. A large set of noise. That's the range that needs to be broken. Until that breaks, it's just up and back, folks. I mean, we've already done it 5 times. Down, up, down, up, down, up again. I don't know how many times you can do it. At some point, it'll break. One way or the other. And when it does, then you can get interested in these guys again. Until then, it's kind of hard to do a lot. Thanks for joining me. Tell a friend. Tell two, I'm LA. This is and it was your daily Neoclassic TA. Have yourself a great night. I'll see you next time. Good night.